Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today on the bench we've got the brand new Ailunce H1, the new flagship DMR radio from Retevis. This handheld was designed with the amateur radio community in mind, as it contains a very comprehensive set of features that should make operating in the digital modes a little easier. Before I forget, I need to thank my friends over at banggood.com for sending the radio to me and for supporting the channel. It's always appreciated. Now, the H1 isn't exactly what you'd call a cheap radio. In fact, it's around $179 or £130 in the UK, which makes this a much more premium DMR radio, and it's pitching itself against other established models such as those made by Anytone and Ailunce. By paying a little bit more money for a radio than the cheap Chinese models, you'd expect to get great performance, and hopefully some long-term firmware updates as things evolve. The build quality should also be better than the budget radios. So let's get into the main specification of the H1. This is a dual band radio capable of transmitting on the VHF and UHF ranges between 136 and 174 MHz and 400 to 520 MHz. The radio is primarily aimed at the 2 meter and 70 cm amateur radio bands, but my version was supplied unlocked, so it would transmit right the way across the frequency ranges, meaning it could also be used for commercial purposes. This radio is capable of operating in both analog FM and DMR digital modes. It features 2 VFOs and dual standby. You can also mix and match modes, so you can set one VFO as analog FM and the other as DMR, or both to the same mode if you need it. The H1 is also equipped with a comprehensive GPS module and APRS functionality, meaning it can send and receive positioning data between other amateur radio users with compatible radio systems. On the DMR side of things, this radio has a huge amount of memory to allow the importing of contact lists from sources such as radioid.net. In fact, the unit can import up to 500,000 contacts from any CSV data source. At the time of filming, there is only something like around 287,000 DMR IDs registered, so the radio should be pretty much future-proof for a long time to come. The H1 also supports talker alias, but we'll go into more details about that in a few minutes. If that wasn't enough, the radio allows you to store up to 4,000 channels and organise those channels into 256 zones, and zones are basically memory banks. Other notable features include AES 256-bit encryption for the DMR side of things. There's also NOAA weather alerts available for users in North America, a man-down alarm system, and a rather unusual single frequency repeater function that allows the unit to create a mesh network between similar radios by relaying time slot 1 to time slot 2 on DMR on the same frequency. To top this all off, the radio offers 3 power levels from approximately 6 watts all the way down to half a watt to help make the battery last even longer. Looking at this radio, it's certainly different from the vast majority of sets I've tested recently. The H1 has a fresh, innovative look, and it's obvious that Retevis wanted it to stand out from the crowd when it comes to design. The unit looks different from anything else on the market right now. The front panel has a clean modern look with a square backlit keyboard. The markings on the keys are easy to read and also double up as a secondary function key for entering text and toggling between memory and VFO modes. The colourful LCD is a real pleasure to look at compared to other units I've tried. This one is so bright that it's even possible to see outdoors in full daylight, which makes it a pleasure to use. Whilst the screen is pretty reflective, it does make up for this with the sheer brightness. It's one of the best examples of a colour screen on a radio that I've ever used. Moving on to the top of the radio, we've got an interesting carbon fibre effect pattern around the volume control and channel change. This radio has 2 round control knobs, one of them for the volume and the other for the channel change. Yes, this radio has both up and down keys to change frequency and channel, plus a rotary VFO. As you can see, the knobs are very rounded, and some people have commented that they should be textured to make them a little bit more grippy, but in testing I've not found this to be an issue, and they contribute to the minimal look on top of the radio. There's also an orange button and a status LED for TX and RX on top of the unit. The orange button can be programmed or assigned a wide variety of functions rather than just being an alarm control. Moving to the left hand side of the unit, we've got a large high gloss black PTT button sandwiched in between 2 rounded programmable side keys. These can be used for lots of different shortcuts, but the most useful one I've found is to assign them to zone up and zone down. Now these controls are not rubberized but have a positive feel and are quite sensitive to touch. The only downside is that you could end up triggering the PTT a little bit too easily if the radio is in your pocket. There is a rather stylish blue flash line that runs down each side of the radio, and this gives it a unique appearance. Moving to the right hand side, we have a standard K-type jack socket behind the rubberized flap. I'm pleased to see that Retevis stuck to the tried and tested connector here, since you can use any old programming lead for the CPS software such as the ones with Baofeng radios. My review radio didn't come shipped with a USB programming cable, so I was glad it worked as expected, and I understand this is normally included inside the package. Now, on the back of the radio we've got the battery pack. This is a chunky 2900 mAh lithium-ion battery with a USB-C connector built onto the battery pack itself. This means that the battery can be charged independently of the radio if needed, or dropped into the supplied desktop charger. I measured the charging rate at around 9 watts, so this is a reasonably fast charge using the supplied USB-C cable. The belt clip supplied attaches by means of 2 screws directly into the radio body just above the battery pack. I noticed this also has the matching carbon fibre effect on the clip. It seems reasonably durable, but time will tell. The antenna port on the radio is a standard SMA female socket, so you'll be able to use your favourite antennas without too many problems, as it's a fairly common connector choice on these type of handhelds. The supplied antenna is a dual band rubber duck around 6 inches long. The performance seemed to be on par with other similar antennas. So let's talk about the basic operation of the H1. As you can see here, the radio can operate in single or dual VFO mode. In the single mode, you get lots of information on the screen, including the zone, channel name and frequency across 3 lines of display. This looks amazing, and almost every aspect of the colour scheme can be changed between night and day colours, plus the channel names and zones can also be customised to a colour that suits your style of operation. This can be done directly from the radio without even using the Windows-based CPS. You can even customise the battery gauge that appears in the top right hand corner. You can choose between battery percentage or bars to represent the power remaining. This is very similar to options found on a mobile phone. Switching between the 2 VFOs is really easy. Simply press the star key to toggle between VFO A and VFO B. The letter A or B appears next to the active VFO. Now to switch between VFO and memory mode, all you need to do is hold down the red key under the right hand corner of the LCD screen for a second and it will change. Likewise, if you want to change between the single or dual VFO modes, this can be done by pressing the hash key in the bottom right corner. There's also a few other handy shortcuts available from the keypad. When in VFO mode, you can toggle between analog FM and digital settings by simply pressing the hash key, and this will cycle between FM and DMR modes. It seems like Retevis have really thought of the operator and added some time-saving features. It just makes using the radio a little more enjoyable. It's the same when it comes to using the programmable side keys and the orange buttons. These can be assigned to do various tasks. There is a whole range of functions that can be assigned to these keys, but in my case I use the 2 side key buttons to change through my defined zones, change the power levels and release the squelch. It's certainly a very flexible radio when it comes to customization. So let's take a look at the menu system on the Ailunce H1. The menu is divided into several sections depending on which mode you're operating in. There is a colourful icon next to each option and it looks really great. You can adjust almost every parameter on the radio without having to touch the CPS programming software, as the options are available from the front panel. This is what makes the H1 different from most commercial or business DMR radios. Here's a quick example of how I can select a zone from the unit. Simply find zone on the menu, click the green button to go into that section, and then I've got several options available, including the naming of the zone, adding or removing channels, saving the changes and then activating the zone by pressing select. Easy as that. One of the best things about this radio is its ability to make changes to almost every setting without even touching a computer, and this makes it ideal for field programming and much easier to use than a lot of cheap radios. Firmware seems to have been thought out in a logical manner. Here's some of my highlights. Scan modes. Inside here you can choose to scan for CTCSS, DCS codes, or in digital modes you can also scan for a specific colour code. Normal VFO scanning has also been considered, and you can set up an upper and lower search limit between 2 points, such as the 2 meter handband. Scans can include carrier operated, time operated and search modes. The GPS in the H1 is also well catered for. Here you can switch the GPS function on as required. set which satellites the unit can receive, such as the US or Chinese GPS system. You can also see your current position to check if the radio has received a lock, in addition to the green GPS symbol that appears on the top of the display once the radio has a fix. There is also a feature that can trigger an alert should you travel beyond a predetermined limit. Moving on to APRS, this is a feature that was designed specifically for amateur radio and goes hand in hand with the GPS functionality. The H1 supports analog and digital APRS modes, meaning it can work with any other amateur radio equipment supporting the standards. Inside the options, you can set up APRS beaconing, and a nice feature is the ability to set APRS power levels independently from your main VFO or memories. This can be useful if working at close range to save power. Obviously, beaconing interval can also be defined as needed, including the option of smart beaconing. Again, there are lots of options that can be defined here, including call sign, comments, and even a symbol to represent your location. You can also tell that a lot of thought has been put into the APRS settings, and it's fun to explore these options, as you'll see in my on-air testing. The Ailunce H1 also has another convenient feature allowing you to program multiple radio IDs and apply these individually to channels accordingly. This is handy if you use the radio for work purposes as well as ham radio. You can simply create multiple radio IDs and assign them as required. A key feature of the H1 is the digital monitor, sometimes known as promiscuous mode. This also allows you to receive any unencrypted transmission on DMR without having to know the correct colour code or talk group. The H1 fully supports this operation and is very handy when searching out new systems and repeaters when you don't have the full access details. It does mean that the H1 is a very interesting device to use as a scanning receiver. Of course, it's not going to be as fast as using a dedicated device such as a Uniden or Whistler scanner, but it's nice to see the options in there. One of the best features of the radio is also the talk alias function on DMR. This allows radios to send call sign, name and other information even without uploading a contact list. One of the biggest complaints for digital radio systems like DMR is the fact that you need to use an imported contact list in order to see information about a user. Talker alias is an attempt to resolve this issue and make the system operate in a manner similar to Yaesu's C4FM system, where the radio transmits the call sign of the user without the requirement of a central database. As long as the two stations transmitting have Talker alias set up, you should see the call sign and name appear on the display. This is a real time saver since contact lists can become out of date very quickly. It's certainly a positive feature to enable. The only downside I discovered on the H1 is that you have to choose between talk alias or contact lists. You can't use both together. For example, I was hoping that if a contact ID number wasn't found in the radio database, the H1 could fall back to the talker alias if available, but right now this function doesn't work that way. I'm wondering if a future firmware update would fix this. Of course, the radio supports all types of private and group call contacts. These are easy to create on the fly or import using CSV files through the Retevis software. I imported a list of well-known contacts for Brandmeister that I found online, and I didn't have too many problems getting this to work. The radio also has full text messaging support, and it's easy to message other DMR contacts using the pre-made templates or your own custom message, just like using a text on a mobile phone. Simply create the message and choose the contact from the list or a manual dial. Okay, it's time to do a power test on this unit and see how well the H1 looks on the Shawcom SW33 Plus. Now let's take a listen to the DMR audio quality on this radio. I'm connected to a Pi-Star hotspot which is logged into the Brandmeister network, and we're listening on Talk Group 91, which is worldwide, so it's usually quite busy. Audio levels tend to vary quite a lot between stations, but that's just the nature of DMR and microphone gain levels.
Do the math in my head as to whether it's a good afternoon or still a good morning. I already got it wrong once this morning. I used the plus sign instead of the minus. Alpha Juliet 7 Tango Mike. PJ. Oh, this looks familiar. I think we may have had a QSO before, perhaps. From Victor Echo 6 Delta India Lima. I'm going to go with good afternoon, I think. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I am actually in northern Utah, so I'm a little bit north of Salt Lake City, and I think we're in the same time zone. I'm in Mountain Standard Time, so it is now about 5 minutes to 11 local time. But yeah, we're down here doing pretty good, and starting to warm up. 83 degrees Fahrenheit here, so we're getting a little bit warm. Not too bad out there. Back to you.
If I've got my geography right, I will the moment I click on your detail, and then that will tell me everything. I'm looking at your QRZ page currently. Wow, that's quite an impressive engine that's on your bio page there. I've never seen that. Of course, I probably would never see it come up into Calgary, but it looks really different. And to the point, it sure stands out nice. A nice picture that you have taken, or somebody has taken for you. Very impressed with that picture. Like I said, 18 degrees Charlie, and you say you're warming up there. We're climatized to this kind of temperature, so and if we didn't have the temperature and the weather to complain about, I'm not sure we would have an awful lot to talk about. Go figure. PJ, sir, thank you for the contact. I appreciate it, and I most definitely will log this into QRZ. You guys are at a disadvantage. Well, what's the word I'm looking for? Disadvantage? That's because there's 2 awards that QRZ you can claim, and they're in the States. So we don't have very many awards that you can collect from Canada. Not even all provinces. Go figure. Anyway, sir, TJ, thank you for the call, sir. I much appreciate it. Have yourself a good rest of the day, and hopefully it doesn't get too hot for you. Alpha Juliet Tango. Alpha Juliet 7 Tango Mike. Victor Echo 6 Delta India Lima. Waving goodbye, sir, because it looks like 91 is busy from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and looking forward to doing this again at some point or other, sir. Goodbye, sir.
Alpha Juliet 7 Tango Mike. This is Mike 0 Tango Zulu X-Ray calling from the UK.
Mike 0 Tango Zulu X-Ray. Yes, this is Alpha Juliet 7 Tango Mike. Go ahead.
M0TZX returning. Yeah, well, good evening from the UK. Name here is Ed, Echo Delta. My QDH is the county of Leicestershire in England, about 100 kilometres north of the city of London. I'm just listening to your previous QSO there, and I was also looking at your QRZ.com page, and saw the picture of the train there. Back to you, Alpha Juliet 7 Tango Mike from Mike 0 Tango Zulu X-Ray.
Okay, so we're outside with the Ailunce H1 transceiver. I just wanted to show everybody how good this display is outdoors, because a lot of these colour screen radios just aren't that great when you're outdoors, and they're very difficult to read. But this one has got such a vivid, vibrant colour display that you can still see it even when it's quite sunny like today. So as you can see, it's quite nice weather, a little bit of cloud and everything around, but we're just up in the forests as we usually do on the afternoon with a dog walk. And I'm quite impressed that I can still read that display just fine, and everything seems to be okay. And the other reason we're out here is because we're testing APRS. Now, I've actually got another radio with me transmitting an APRS beacon, as is this one, and I'm hopefully going to show you guys a demo of that in a second. It should pop up. We've got the GPS enabled, and we should be able to see an APRS beacon come in just a minute or so anyway. So that's the plan, and hopefully you'll be able to see how that actually looks on this radio. And there you go, sure enough, there's our beacon position. And as you can see, it's all working A-OK out here. So whenever you receive an APRS packet, it comes up like that on the display once you've enabled the APRS modem. And likewise, this radio is also set up in beacon mode, so it can also transmit back. And I don't know if we're going to hear anything else out here today. It's very, very quiet on the APRS side of things. I have heard one or two stations earlier on, but nothing for the last few minutes. And certainly there you go, you saw the beacon just come up a second ago. So this is on quite a short interval just for testing purposes, but you'd be able to log into somewhere like aprs.fi and see if it's been picked up by anybody afterwards. But if I just go into the menu and down to APRS, and let's have a look on here, analog APRS settings. Obviously you can do all of this straight from the front panel of the radio. There is only a couple of things you can't do, which I'll explain in a second, and one of them is TX frequency. Now if you've got this radio set up on a different frequency, you're monitoring a different band, or you've got it in dual channel mode, one of the things you can do is you can still send a beacon where it automatically switches back to a chosen frequency. So if I go up to TX frequency, you can see there it says selected channel, which obviously transmits wherever it is with the APRS packet, or you can have the pre-programmed ones. Now, until I went into the CPS, 144.800, which is the UK APRS frequency, was missing from the list. I had to manually change that. So that's kind of a little bit annoying, but it'll be fixable in one of the other firmwares, I'd imagine, because that's the frequency that the UK uses. There was the other ones worldwide in there, but not the UK frequency for the APRS service. So anyway, I've pre-programmed it in the CPS. You can change these yourself. It's just remembering, or bearing in mind anyway, that you might need to do that unless you actually leave it on the selected channel on the other VFO. But the best thing is you can be in beacon mode and be somewhere else and it'll still transmit on the correct frequency. And the other thing that I noticed somewhere in here, I can't quite remember where it is now, it's in one of these things. Let me just cancel that a second. Down there, APRS modem. APRS units can be determined in there. APRS TX power, which I thought was quite unusual. You can set it for low, medium or high, which is really good. So that's separate from the normal transceiver settings. You can actually set it to beacon at low, mid or high power, which I think is quite a thoughtful thing to include in there as well. So basically, everything's really quite easy to use. And that's the essentials of the APRS. I'm going to experiment with that a little bit more afterwards. But obviously, positioning, if we have a look in there, it's the usual stuff. And where you can set the GPS to use either the American or the Chinese GPS service, or both, as the case might be. And you can actually see if it's all working by looking at the GPS info. And yeah, that's about it, really. That's all you need to know when it comes to the APRS side of things anyway. But obviously, the main reason I was showing you this today was so you can actually see the outdoor display quality. And I think this is probably one of the best transceivers that I've tried in terms of, readability anyway. And there you go. You can see it in daylight. That's what it actually looks like. I'm still liking this top panel here. I know these controls at the top do divide opinion looking at what I've seen online already about them, but I've not found them too slippy. They seem to be okay, and they are marked up with like channel and volume on there as well, so you know what each one does. And it's an unusual sort of design on top of the radio. So, and even the belt clip has that little sort of carbon fibre design, but it is only plastic at the end of the day. But it does look quite good. So I think on the whole it's a different type of radio. And it looks like that was another APRS packet coming in, but it didn't quite decode it. It wasn't quite enough. I have found a couple of little glitches. There is a little bit of a bug in the radio, I think in this current firmware. If I happen to be receiving a beacon at the same time as I press the red key or move up or down, it makes the audio go a bit strange, and sometimes it even locks up the radio. And that can be a bit of an awkward situation, because you have to turn it off and turn it back on again. But I think it's just a little bug in the current firmware, so we'll just have to see how that one pans out when new firmware for the radio is released. It's not 100% perfect, but don't forget it is an early release radio, and I'm sure that Retevis still has some work to do. But there you go, that's it.
Yeah, G0SGR, yeah, I've managed to get it. I went to that shortcut, they have the little shortcut memory, and it was just default at 100, so I had to go back into into the radio to change it. So it seems to be okay now.
Yeah, okay, Steve, this is G7UFS returning to you there, yeah. Loud and clear into the repeater from this side anyway, so it's a fair old distance from back in Bridlington anyway. But I'm just using a handheld. I'm just testing this Retevis Ailunce H1 transceiver at the moment. It's one of them dual FM and DMR radios, Steve, so I've just been playing around with the APRS function on it and everything, so I just thought I'd see if I could get you from up this way. Back to you.
Yeah, G0SGR returning. Yeah, well, it's obviously I'm receiving, you would say, probably about SA test 9. Slight white noise, but obviously it's a fair old distance. I'm on full power, but I'm getting you no problem, Simon. Like I say, just slight white noise with you. Readability is 5, so 4 to 5, but it sounds good.
Yeah, G7UFS returning. Yeah, no problem, Steve. Well, I'll tell you something. Your audio's cracking through the repeater on this radio. It's coming in crystal clear. I'm just at the back of Dolby Forest, overlooking where the RAF Filingdale site is and everything. So you've got some idea of where I am. Really good signal into repeat up this way. I'm only using about 2 watts input. So it's certainly, I don't think it's too far away from this location, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's coming in really nice and clear to me, Steve. So pretty good achievement from a little handheld anyway. Back to you.
Yeah, G0SGR. Yeah, well, like I say, I've just listened on input and I can't hear you on the input, which I didn't think I would. But I don't know if, it seems about, I don't think conditions are up or anything, it seems about average signal what I get for this repeater. But you're sounding okay. And like I say, what did you say? It was a Retevis. I can't even say the name. But a Retevis. But it sounds okay. I didn't know whether you wanted to try anything on 70 Simon. Go ahead.
Yeah, G0SGR, G7UFS returning. Well, I can't think we've got any repeater up this way that I'd get into really on this empty SEMS band, so we'll just have to stay down here for a minute or two. I'm just recording a little bit of video anyway for the channel, but yeah, it's the Ailunce H1, Steve, yeah, made by Retevis. It's that colour screen DMR radio. You might have seen a certain famous YouTuber playing with one of these recently. It's the one that FXB was looking at with the very bright colour screen outdoors. And the biggest selling point of this radio, apart from the DMR and everything, is it's got a screen you can see outside, even in bright sunlight. So I'm quite impressed with it, really, Steve. It's quite good, even in the daylight. You can see the screen, so that must be a first from a colour screen radio. Back to you.
Oh, Roger. All right, well, that's good. Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing the review on it and everything. And what have you. How's the weather been anyway? Has it been red hot? It's been red hot here from about 2 o'clock onwards. So I would have thought you'd have probably got the same up there, have you, Simon? Go ahead.
Yeah, G0SGR, G7UFS returning. Yeah, pretty much the same, Steve. It's cooling off a bit now because obviously it's about, what time is it? About 6:30, isn't it? 6:45, something like that. But yeah, it got hot about 2 o'clock this afternoon, and it's about 26, 27 degrees. I think it was nearly 28 on way down here, which I didn't expect today, to be honest with you, because the forecast wasn't very good, and it's all of a sudden picked up. But I think we've got that storm. Is it called Floris, the one that's heading into the UK tomorrow? Supposed to be super high winds and everything, a bit like the storms you get in the winter time. But they said it's quite unusual for this time of year to be getting a storm coming in, but doesn't sound too good for the next couple of days. But certainly we're making the most of it today. It's lovely weather up here at the moment still. Back to you.
Yeah, G7UFS, G0SGR returning. Yeah, well, that's good then. Let's get it out of the way before weekend. And what have you. And hopefully we'll get decent weather for the weekend. But yeah, we had like predicted, from about 10 o'clock till 12, it slung it down into Inbrid and whatever else. But this afternoon it's been lovely and warm, so I've been busy doing odd jobs. I've been round to Peter's, obviously, as you've seen, sorted him out with that, so hopefully you'll get it sorted, Sam. Go ahead.
Yeah, G7UFS returning. Yeah, definitely. We'll get it all sorted and everything. But yeah, we've just been making the most of the weather before the storms come in, and I'm back at work tomorrow anyway, so just figured we might as well get out with the dog, really. She loves it up here anyways, you know, so it's a good place to be testing radio. But I've been testing the APRS on here as well with the GPS function, and it seems to work quite well. I took my other radio with me, the little Yace, when I was beaconing to myself to give it a test, but I've heard a few other stations this afternoon as well, one from Harrogate on here, which I didn't manage to capture on the video, but you know, it's receiving okay, so that's the main thing, Steve. Well, here's a quick look at the Retevis CPS software for the Ailunce H1, and as you can see, it doesn't look like the average radio programming CPS. Retevis have given this a little bit more of a modern look, and at the time of filming, the latest version is 1.1.4, and it seems to have come a long way in the past few months. Now, this works with the H1, but it also works with some other radios too. If you go to Connect Device, you can choose your COM serial port from here. In my case, it's COM10, but you'll notice in the drop-down list of radios, there is a few others being supported by this CPS. So I think the end game from Retevis is to get a unified CPS working with most of their radios, so you don't have to install loads of different software on it. A bit like Chirp does, I suppose, for all the different Chinese radios. So this is a really good step in the right direction. Let's close that down and go ahead and read. We've got a connection profile set for the H1 already, so I'm going to click on OK with this and let the radio start reading. Now, because this radio has 4,000 memories potentially and 250 zones, it can take a little while to read all the data into the system, and of course there's all the DMR settings as well. So it can take 2 to 3 minutes to do this, so by the power of video editing, I'm going to pause it there and skim right across to the next section. Right, so that's the memories and all the settings read into the CPS, and this page gives you the key information about the radio. It looks quite smart, doesn't it, really? You've got a nice picture of the radio up there, and it does give us all the usual information in there. The coverage range of the radio, and the host version is the firmware version of this radio as well. So at the time of writing, version 0744 is the very latest one, and that's supposed to correct some bugs in the APRS section, which we'll probably take a look at some other time as well. So I've not had time to explore that one yet, but it's certainly good to see new firmware becoming available quite quickly for this radio now. Okay, so let's move down to zone. All pretty straightforward stuff. This is where you can create banks of channels, and in my case I've put a few together there, including one for repeaters. So let's just check out what's inside there. So if we just click in that section with the edit, this is where you add the channels to the zone. Fairly straightforward. You just go down the list of any channels that you've already programmed in, and if you wanted to add them into the zone, you just simply tick each one of these boxes. So it's good, apart from it's a little bit tedious. You can't multiple select at once. You've just got to go down the list and tick each one of these individually. I'd have liked to have seen some kind of system where you can add and remove them en masse, but sadly it's not available inside this type of UI. They've tried to make it as simplistic as possible though, by just simply ticking the boxes to turn things on and off and add or remove them from the zone. So that's something to bear in mind, and you can only have a maximum of 64 channels per zone. So you can import and export these using CSV, as you can with most information inside this CPS, which makes it a real time saver. If you're good at working with spreadsheets, you can export data from one radio to another fairly straightforward, or things like Chirp as well. Have a look at this section. This is the channel information. This is the core of the CPS programming. This is where you would bring all your channels into the system, and then you can obviously tweak them from this point here. If I have a look at my hotspot, which is a DMR frequency, click on that one, and this is the interface that pops up on top there, where you can choose all the usual settings for this, like timeouts, color code, talk group, and time slot, etc, etc. So I think this is really quite straightforward to use, nicely laid out and everything. Nothing really much to add to that. Similar for the analog section, apart from obviously instead of getting the color codes and everything for analog, you do get the CT, CSS and DCS encoding options, and all the other stuff like the offsets and everything. So really straightforward to program up. The best way to bring all these in though, obviously in my case I didn't type all these in by hand, I just imported them using the CSV import feature, and this is really straightforward. It uses JSON CSV files. If you're unsure of the format of them, when you first get the radio, just do a basic read and export a CSV. load it into something like Microsoft Excel, and then you can copy that and use it as a template to bring data in. So if you're good at cutting and pasting and manipulating CSV files, then you're going to love this piece of software. It's relatively straightforward to work with, and if you do happen to import something that doesn't quite work properly, it creates a log file and tells you why the import failed as well, which I find is kind of useful when you're trying to debug anything, if you're trying to bring data in from another unit. So it's just worth remembering these options are available in almost every aspect of this CPS, such as the zones, scan lists, and everything else in there. So yeah, it's worth definitely getting to grips with import and export in this kind of thing if you've got a lot of frequencies to bring into the radio. Common settings, pretty straightforward. Just the basics of the radio, things like the day and night mode, the time and date format, helpful if you're using the GPS or the APRS facility. All those kind of things can be done in there. Vox settings, you name it. Everything that can be done from the front panel of the radio can be done inside here as well. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to tweak them all up and do them all whilst you've got it on the big screen than messing around through the menus on the radio. Buttons is quite interesting. This is where you can do your key assignments. Remember the PTT where it had the top and bottom side key buttons? I set mine to zone up and zone down, but equally you can set them to do almost anything. There's lots and lots of features inside there to give you quick shortcuts to those facilities. Things like the long press as well you can do. I've set my long press on side key 1 to adjust the power level on the radio, and side key 2 as squelch on off. That's like basically a monitor button as well. So all kinds of things you can do inside there. You can even lock down the menus to stop a user changing the settings if you were giving this to somebody else who wasn't as experienced at using a radio. I think that's really good. Power options, a bit of a strange one. This is where you go into the settings and change things like the colour schemes as well. So I don't know why it's called power option, to be quite honest with you. I don't quite know why that lives inside there. But you can change every aspect of the radio for the colour schemes to whatever suits you, really. So you can mess about with those all day long and make it look really interesting, let's just say. FM radio, self-explanatory again. Broadcast FM radio stations, put your favourite radio stations into there. And you can even define a power on or standby image, which is kind of interesting. So you could create your own custom logo for your company or your own image for your, you know, with your call signing or something like that. Very good. Scan lists, again, create scan lists for the channels you want to scan regularly. I've just thrown a few into there to test things, which is kind of interesting. Again, you just tick these on or off, or again, you can import them or export them in CSV format. VFO scan, top, upper and lower limits for scanning, just for finding new frequencies or activity in your area, a bit like a scanner. And then inside DMR services, all the usual thing, encryption, that's the AES 256-bit encryption. Quick text messages, you can define these on, again, you can import and export them. So if there's a template you want, you can pop them all into here. These are just some that come loaded. Priority contacts, this is where you would define your group calls for things like Brandmeister if you're connecting up to DMR networks. I've just got some of the more frequently used ones inside here for the UK. I think I got a list online somewhere and I just imported these in. So it's handy to have those group call as priority contacts and other things like that in the list as well. Local contacts, this is where you can install the entire radio ID database if you're feeling like it. So this is where you would use the import and export. This is where you get all that information out, and at the moment there's like something like there's under 300,000 worldwide right now, and the radio's got enough memory for 500,000 contacts. So you've got bags of memory inside there which will give you all the data for everybody who's using Brandmeister and all the other DMR networks around the world. So that's worth looking at, but bear in mind it does take an awful long time to import these in. So if you import nearly 300,000 contacts, you're looking at about 45 minutes while it passes all the data and puts them in. Then you've got to write them to the radio as well. So we're not going to show you that right now, but it does take a long time to do, as it does with most DMR radios. The other thing that's quite interesting is the talk alias section. If you don't want to be bothered importing thousands of contacts into the memory, you can use talk alias instead, which we spoke about earlier on in the video. And the other thing is RX group lists. Now you need to define these in order to get audio through on DMR, or at least it seems to be that case, unless I'm doing something wrong. Basically, when you assign a channel with DMR on something like CQ UK or whatever, you've got to make sure that the group is actually ticked into there, otherwise you don't hear any audio. And I was hoping that maybe a firmware update in the future would fix that, because on the Baofeng DM32 I didn't need to define an RX group. The audio came through as soon as the channel became active, but in this I found myself having to turn on groups to obviously listen to them through the audio. Otherwise the light came on the radio, but I didn't actually get any audio out of the system, so that's kind of like a bit of annoyance really. But a lot of DMR radios do work like that, where you do have to specify an RX group list or a receive group list. So moving on down to the APRS section, let's have a quick look inside there. You've got the common APRS settings, which you can also adjust from the front panel of the radio again. A few things to note inside there. Independently adjustable TX power for APRS, which is really good, or you can set a manual APRS position rather than using the GPS. Obviously smart beaconing is something else that some people might want to consider too for saving battery life. APRS analog section, well, inside here you can define some preset channels for APRS. I think I mentioned earlier in the video, when I first got the radio, there wasn't the UK APRS frequency in there already predetermined, so I just went into here and edited it to make it option number 2. And of course worldwide you can set this to any frequency you like to operate on APRS. It's just a bit of a time saver really, more than anything. And likewise you can also change the setting for the symbol that is displayed according to the APRS protocol. So in this case, if I just click on check on there, you get a picture of the walking person because it's a portable device. So that's pretty cool how it shows all that kind of stuff in there. Define your call sign for APRS inside there as well. So digital APRS, haven't even tried this yet, but again, that's something that some people might want to experiment with too. So in a nutshell, that is basically it inside the Retevis CPS software for the Ailunce H1. It's fairly straightforward to use, and you know, it looks a bit more fresh and modern than the average CPS, and I quite like the ability to import and export all the different settings throughout. So I think it's a good step in the right direction, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that it looks pretty smart really. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. So that's the Retevis Ailunce H1. It's a comprehensive radio designed from the ground up for amateur use. The main advantage of this radio compared to purchasing a commercial DMR radio is the ability to program almost everything from the front panel, and it's a real time saver. The ability to seamlessly mix and match analog and digital modes is excellent, along with the APRS and GPS function. However, it's not quite perfect at the moment. I managed to crash the radio on a couple of occasions by leaving APRS beaconing running whilst I was scanning. The screen froze up and the audio glitched out, so I had to reboot the unit to get it working again. There's also another issue that's annoying me at the moment. This is the fact that you seem to have to assign a channel to an RX group list in DMR mode, otherwise no audio is heard. On other radios such as the Baofeng DM32, I've been able to leave this blank and everything works fine, but on the H1 we need to populate the RX group in order for it to work. Hopefully this can be changed in firmware in the future. Speaking of firmware, you've got to remember that this radio hasn't been out for a long period of time and it's bound to have some issues that need addressing. Retevis has a comprehensive website with downloads available. I'd also recommend checking out the Facebook support group for the Ailunce H1, as it's a really useful resource with plenty of info, so that should help solve any issues. My thanks go to Banggood for sending this interesting radio over to me. I hope you found this review helpful in making the decision, and whilst this isn't a cheap radio, it does offer a lot of features that should make ham radio operation more enjoyable, as DMR can be quite complex to set up. I'm going to leave some links in the description to the Retevis support pages, and if you're interested in buying the Ailunce H1, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow my affiliate links in the description below to help support my work on the channel. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. We've got lots more radio gear coming up over the next few weeks, and 2025 seems to be one of the best years for new radio related products coming out of China. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye for now.